Coming up, we have Jeff Chilton. Jeff is a registered SQF consultant and vice president of consulting for Intertek Alchemy, with over 30 years of experience in the food industry, specializing in food safety, quality assurance, and plant management. Before joining Alchemy, Jeff was the founder and president of Chilton Consulting Group, where he leveraged his prior experiences as a plant manager and director of quality assurance in helping clients achieve and sustain their SQF certifications. Speaking on root cause and corrective action, fostering food safety culture with a team approach, please welcome Jeff Chilton.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. It's a pleasure to be back here with you today, and certainly an honor to be participating in the SQF Focus Day as well. I'm really excited about the presentation that we have for you today. This is going to be root cause and corrective action, where we talk about fostering a food safety culture with a team approach. So what excites me is this actually combines two of my favorite topics, including food safety culture and root cause analysis and corrective actions as well, into one presentation. So I'm excited about the information that we have to share with you today. And thank you very much for everyone taking time to attend this presentation as well. So let's go ahead and get started and take a look at the agenda that we'd like to share with you today as well. First, I'm going to lay out background information for you about food safety culture and how it applies to SQF and your company specifically as well. And then secondly, I'll share information with you about the actual CAPA processes and root cause analysis for RCA processes as well, to give you some more information on that. And then we'll talk about the practices for the team approach, about how do we pull it together and truly foster a good food safety culture at your facilities as well. And then last, we'll just quickly share some available resources with you and definitely leave some time for questions and answers at the end, and look forward to any questions that you'd like to share at that time as well. So let's start with food safety culture and talk about, what is food safety culture, because this is such an important part of your organizations. And I know it's gotten a lot more attention in the last few years, and it's certainly become a lot more clear, whereas prior to the last few years, it had been somewhat of an ambiguous term. But in recent years, we've certainly made a lot of progress in defining what is food safety culture, and then how do we actually measure that within your organizations itself. But, ultimately, it just makes up exactly who we are, what do we do, and what do we believe is what drives the food safety culture in your organization itself. And as we all know, the Global Food Safety Initiative has written a white paper on food safety culture. I hope you're familiar with that. If not, I would encourage you to download it free from the internet so you can learn more about it as well. And then within the food safety culture white paper, the GFSI defined really 5 different dimensions of food safety culture. And you can see all 5 of those on this chart. But the one that we're obviously focusing in on today is the people dimension itself, because that's one of the most important dimensions of food safety culture and really makes up the individuals throughout your company that are going to drive the food safety culture for your firm as well. So when we think about people, what we really want to have a positive food safety culture is to make sure that we have the people engaged and empowered to be able to create that successful culture as well. And when we talk about engagement, it's really helping all those employees and everyone in the organization itself to be actively involved, to truly understand what you need to do and to have the competencies to be able to do that as well, but also not just know what to do, but really the why behind it. And if you help everyone understand not only what do we have to do, but why do we have to do it, that's when individuals become personally committed to this process as well. So that's what we want to drive with positive food safety cultures. And then, of course, as we're focusing on here, we really are talking about food safety itself. And these are the practices that have to be applied throughout the organization. And this is a culture that requires everyone to be involved. It's really every single role in the organization, every person in the organization as well, because we all have to think, as every single employee touches and handles that product each and every day on every line, they have an opportunity to impact the food safety of that product itself in a positive way, or potentially jeopardize it in a negative way as well, which we certainly don't want to do as well. So we want to make sure that we have the training, the education, the competencies, and the commitment of each of those individuals to make sure that we're handling the products properly as well. And then let's talk about the SQF code. One thing I love about the SQF code, there's many things, but one is the fact that it starts out with management responsibility. And it starts with food safety culture as well. So you can see right here at the beginning of the code in section 2112, it talks about the senior site management. So that's responsibility at the upper levels of the organization, and then drive it through a company, shall lead and support a food safety culture within the site. That includes all these components that you see below. And I'm not going to read every word to you by any means, but I do want to call out a couple of highlights to where it talks about how do we get our people involved and what are they responsible for as well. And then, as you can see, one of the things that I love also is the food safety objectives. It starts by defining what are the true food safety objectives that you're going to measure your food safety and quality system by. And then senior management is responsible to dedicate and make available adequate resources to be able to meet those objectives. But then notice for the staff, for all the employees and the associates in the organization itself, about 3 key responsibilities that are laid out right here at the beginning of the code. Number 1 is to make sure they're informed and held accountable. So there's 2 parts to that. One is you have to communicate with them to make sure they are informed, understand what those responsibilities are. And we do have to hold staff accountable. Certainly, we want everyone to be motivated to do the right thing for the right reason all the time. But there are times that accountability is necessary, and that's a requirement of the code as well. And then notice the next one, the staff are positively encouraged and required to notify management of actual or potential food safety issues as well. So we want to have that open communication where employees feel safe about bringing something to the attention of management or quality assurance as well, and that we positively encourage them to do it. Make sure they know this is part of your job and part of your responsibility for everybody in the organization. And if there's an issue, we need to know about it so we can take action on it as well. And then last, notice this, that they're empowered to act. And that's what food safety culture is all about, empowering those associates to take action when there is an issue, so we make sure that we protect the safety of our food products as well. And then this slide talks about 10 of the must-haves for SQF, for food safety culture itself. And I'd like to reinforce this. I'm going to go through them pretty quickly because we have a lot to cover in today's presentation as well. But it starts with your food safety policy statement, or if you're also certified to the SQF quality code, you would have to address food safety and quality in that policy statement as well. But that's where we lay out those expectations for the employees and talk about having everyone involved, holding them accountable, and encouraging that type of feedback through this situation as well. So it starts with the policy statement. Secondly, the food safety objectives. And these are true objectives. These are measurable goals that you can set, that you're going to define what is the objective, what is the performance measure for that, and how often are you going to measure that and give feedback to your organization as well. And then third, having your food safety culture, and I hate to use the term program, but having a process in place that documents what do you do around this area to be able to manage it in your facility. And then the other parts, are pretty self-explanatory, and making sure we have adequate staffing, not only in operations, but also in QA and sanitation to make sure that we're producing safe food products. It's a great idea to keep up a resource summary to show here's all the things we've done to promote food safety in your facility in terms of dedication of staff, dedication of training time, capital expenditures that have been laid out. Show what you've done to help promote this as well. And then make sure we train all the employees on the policy statements in the appropriate languages, and we have those signed and posted in the facility itself. And then that we continually reinforce the food safety principles, and then making sure that we do provide systems for that two-way communication to make sure that employees do feel comfortable bringing things to you, and that we're also sharing information both ways there as well. And then again, to promote reporting, to have a way to do that either confidentially or anonymously, or directly with you as well, but make sure you have a good system in place to report that. And again, to have regular meetings to communicate the results of that. So this is what we need to make sure that we're building a positive culture within the company. And then last, around culture, just to talk about and reinforce who needs to be involved. And the short answer is everyone, every role, every person. But that includes all the associates, all the hourly employees, all the supervisors on the front line, and the mid-level management as well. And then the support departments that are so critically important: quality assurance, maintenance, sanitation as well, and senior leadership. Senior leadership needs to positively sponsor a food safety culture and drive that down through the organization as well, but by laying out those vision and the mission and the objectives that we're talking about here, to make sure that they are providing the resources and to be able to give that vision and support for your food safety culture throughout the organization itself. And then, of course, we'll talk about the food safety team, where a lot of that responsibility drives down to as well. But remember, for it to be successful, we have to have everyone involved in this process as well. So secondly, let's talk about CAPA processes. And I do love CAPA processes and RCA processes as well. You know, what we found with a lot of consulting companies and companies that I audited for, as I was certified as an SQF auditor for over a decade as well, is that, you know, too many companies seem to be afraid of CAPA processes. It's kind of like, you know, we're telling on ourselves and we're going to get in trouble for telling on ourselves. And that is not the way that it should be. You know, if you have a positive food safety culture in your organization, you really should embrace these CAPA, the corrective action, preventative action processes, and the root cause analysis processes too, because these are a great quality tool that gives you the opportunity to be able to drive continuous improvement throughout your organization as well. So it's not a bad thing for you to document CAPA processes in your organization. In fact, it's just the opposite. It's a good thing. And, you know, when I did audits and looked at a lot of companies, you know, they didn't have a whole lot of CAPA records or to be able to share. But, you know, I would encourage you to really embrace this process and use it to your advantage throughout your system to improve your food safety and quality management systems as well. So let's make sure we know what we're talking about. So these definitions come directly out of the glossary from the SQF code itself. And so let's take a look at this, because part of this often gets overlooked. So let's look at the definition of the corrective action. It talks about the action to eliminate the cause of a detected nonconformity identified at a food safety audit, a deviation identified at a quality audit, or other undesirable situations, and to be able to prevent the reoccurrence. And that's the part that I really want you to focus on. Notice that not only we take the corrective action, but we're also taking action to be able to prevent the reoccurrence. That's how we eliminate the cause. And then as we look at the definition of a root cause analysis, then that's a method of problem solving to be able to identify and resolve those core issues that cause the nonconformity, the deviation, or other adverse event that could have affected as well. So when we think about CAPA, we really think about all of these together. There's a corrective action, there's a preventative action, and there's a root cause analysis through this process to be able to do it. And then this slide just shows you, you know, straight from the code itself, again, what are the requirements of the CAPA processes? And these are defined directly in the code under 2531 that you can look at. And it talks about how we have document the responsibility and the methods of how we're going to implement the corrective and the preventative actions. And then notice what it says, and to include the identification of a root cause. So we've got to get to the bottom of the situation to see what's happening with this, to be able to identify the root cause as well. And then the other piece that I really don't want you to overlook is the preventative measure piece that we've talked about. And this comes from 2532 as well. That notice it states that all the records of investigation, root cause analysis, and the resolution of the nonconformities, their corrections, and the implementations of the preventative actions shall be maintained. So we have to have records that are going to address root cause as well. And then another place where this pops up, this often gets overlooked. So try to make sure this doesn't happen at your company, because we've seen some companies that, you know, actually have this identified as a nonconformity during SQF audits because they didn't address it properly. But notice what it says under the internal audits in 25413, that corrective and preventative actions of deficiencies identified during internal audits are taken. So when you're going through your internal audit process, not only do we have to document that corrective action, if we found a nonconformity, here's what we did to fix it, but make sure you also include a column or space on that form to document a preventative action for those nonconformities that are identified during your internal audit process as well. So make sure you don't overlook that in the code itself. And then let's talk about what some of the CAPAs commonly used. So many of these are actually identified in the SQF code. It states that you should initiate the CAPA processes when these types of situations occur. But first and foremost, with the SQF audit nonconformances. So when you go through an actual SQF audit, and at the end of that audit, if there are nonconformances that are identified either minor or major in nature, then we have to apply a corrective action process to that. That will include that root cause analysis process as well. Other times that it's good to document a CAPA is when you have HACCP or food safety plan deviations. So if for some reason that you failed to meet your critical limits to your critical control points or to your preventive controls in a food safety plan, that's a serious issue, and it's a serious enough issue that it should drive a CAPA process for you as well. And then third could be recall investigations, that if you actually go through a formal recall and you're required to be able to retrieve product back from the market, then you do have to do a formal CAPA process with the documentation that you're going to need to submit to your certification body as part of the corrective actions for that process as well. And then other good times to do it. If you have a failure from a traceability exercise, not an actual recall, but a lot of times companies will go through these traceability exercises. And I really challenge you to really make this a true challenge in your company itself. So, don't just choose the easiest product and the easiest one to be able to track the raw materials or the packaging materials. But, as you do this for finished product, raw material, and packaging material, really challenge your organization and see if you can go through that traceability exercise on some of the ones that would be most difficult for you to be able to trace within your organization. And then see if you can meet the standard that you've set, or common industry practices that you may recover 98+% in 4 hours or less, or you may want to set a tighter standard around that as well. Or I know some of your finished product customers have tighter standards in that also. But if you do have a failure around the traceability exercise, this would be a good time for you to initiate a CAPA process as well. And then we talked about the internal audits already. Other good times is if you have non-conforming product or equipment that if it failed to meet your specification requirement for some reason, this is a great time for you to do a CAPA to figure out what went wrong, what can we do to bring this back into compliance as well. Same thing for the equipment, if you have an issue with that as well. And then customer complaint investigations, always a good time to do CAPA, that if you're actually getting complaints from your customers on product that's made it out to the field, it's a good time to really dig into that and see what's happened, how serious is this going to be, and how frequent is it going to be? Is it just one customer, or is this an issue with a lot or multiple lots of product that could be involved throughout your company as well? So great time to use it there. And then the last one, and certainly not least, I love this one at one of our client companies that we worked at, is they had a mandatory part of their SQF procedure for CAPA that said they would initiate a CAPA process every time they had an internal failure over a certain number of pounds of product that were involved, or dollars. So if something costs more than a $5,000 loss for the company, or if it involved more than 2,500 pounds of product, you set the standards, whatever you'd like to, then that's a serious enough situation that it costs your company time and money and materials and labor to go through that. So it's really a good time to apply the CAPA process to figure out what you can do to be able to keep that from happening again as well. So again, I really encourage you to do this, not just when the SQF code requires you to do it, but do it at all times when it's going to be beneficial to help you drive continuous improvement in your food safety and quality management systems as well. And then next, let's talk about root cause analysis, because these go hand in hand oftentimes. So if you're going through a CAPA process, you should typically go through a root cause analysis process as well. And that kind of sounds like a scary thing to do, but it's not. And it's not hard. Any and every one of you can do it each and every time that you need to. But we need to understand what are root cause analysis tools that you can use, and how can you effectively apply those in your company as well. So these are the actual times in the SQF code where it dictates and states that you must do a root cause analysis. So don't overlook these. And that does go with the CAPA records that we talked about already. But notice this one. If you have adverse customer complaints of your customer complaints, hopefully on a monthly basis, at least a quarterly basis as well. But if you notice the customer complaints are going in the wrong direction, that you're getting an increasing number of complaints, or perhaps you have more issues this month or this quarter related to foreign material contamination versus other types as well, then that could be a big issue for you. So if you have adverse trends in the complaints, then the code does actually require you to do a root cause analysis. So make sure that you don't overlook that as you look at those trends on a monthly and quarterly basis as well. And then the other times in the code, again, as we talked about, recall investigations or withdrawals and the minor and major SQF audit nonconformance as well. But again, I just want to reinforce to you, this is the minimum time that you have to do it. But, as a best practice and as an opportunity to improve your food safety and quality management system, I really encourage you to use these RCA processes much more often than that as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at, well, what is an RCA process and how can you get to the root cause? And I'm going to share 3 of them with you on this, and hopefully you're already familiar with that. But if not, it's a great learning opportunity for you as well. But the first one and the most common one and the most simple one typically is the 5 why process. So this is an easy way to do it, to where you define the problem, and then by asking a series of questions of why is that happening, and then you literally ask the why, 5 different times. Why is it happening? Then why did that happen? Why did that happen? Why did that happen? And why did that happen? And if you really take time to truly go through each one of those and do it effectively, by the time you get to that 5th why, you've typically identified the root cause. So simple form, simple process, easy way to apply this for you as well. So I would encourage you to, consider that as one of the most basic ways. And one of the ways that you can do this on a, each and every time you have to apply root cause analysis as well, a specific product situation or an event that may have taken place as well. And then the other one that's common is the fishbone diagram, or Ishikawa analysis, as it's formally called as well. And this is a great way to look at things as well. This takes a much deeper dive into those potential root cause and really makes you think through this process as far as what can contribute to this. And like all of it that analyzes, if you notice it, each of the bones on the fishbone diagram here, represent the different areas that you're going to take a look at. So we have the 5 M's, and then we have the environment or the infrastructure itself. So we're looking at the machinery and the equipment. We're looking at the methods as far as how it's being handled as well. We're looking at the materials, whether it's raw materials or work in process as well. Looking at your manpower in terms of employee practices. Looking at the measurements through that process as well. And then looking at the environment. So don't overlook the environment. I can tell you when we do foreign material control evaluation assessments, we often do these for clients, and we actually use a failure mode effect analysis to go through this process. And when we do that, we're actually doing like a hazard analysis in the facilities itself. And we're looking at all 5 of those M's, but we're also looking at that infrastructure, where in the facility can foreign material come from as well, in terms of the floors and the walls and the ceilings and the doors. Do you have loose caulk, loose paint, things like that as well? So don't overlook the environmental side of this as well to be able to help you. But, it's just a little more formal and detailed process, but, a great way for you to use a different type of root cause analysis method as well. And then the next one that I want to share with you, and this is actually probably my favorite one of all, especially for systemic issues, maybe not just one isolated issue that may have occurred, but if you have systemic issues to where you've had the same problem that's occurred time and time again, this is a great tool that you may want to consider, which would be the 8D approach, with the D standing for disciplines. So there's 8 disciplines that you would go through. And one of the things I love about this 8D approach is that this really fosters that food safety culture that we talked about as well, because it talks about establishing a team of individuals to manage this process. And then notice step 8, recognizing that team, to give them positive reinforcement and recognition at the end of that process as well. So, it's a very structured, very effective type process that you've got here also. But as you can see, you establish a team, you define the problem, you take short-term actions, you identify and verify the root cause, and then you identify and choose your permanent corrective actions. And then you implement those. Obviously, once you decide what do you need to do, the implementation is a key part of that. And then preventative measures on step 7 and then that team recognition on step 8. So, this is a great way for you to be able to do a formal root cause analysis. And I've even used this in our own consulting division to address issues that we've had within our own consulting business at times too. And it's been a very effective process to be able to go through as well. So I encourage you to use really all 3 of those. There's different situations to where a 5Y may be inappropriate here, a fishbone may be appropriate there, an 8D may be appropriate for that bigger systemic issue that you may have also. So, you can use different tools like this for different problems, just depending upon the severity and the likelihood of those problems from reoccurring as well. So I wanted to share those with you. And then, of course, there's other quality process tools that you can go through that can be beneficial as a problem-solving tool that you got as well, that I'm sure you've heard of the plan, do, check, act approach, and that's a good way to be able to do it. Also, the DMAIC process, where you define and measure and you analyze and you improve and you control. And then the Kaizen approach, which is always an effective process as well, where you set out the charter, you do the process, you then identify the root cause, you improve it, then you sustain and audit, and then you report against that as well. So again, we have a very short presentation, so I can't take deeper the dive, but definitely wanted to make sure that you are aware of all those as well, and can be great tools in your quality toolbox as well. And then the last part that I'm going to share with you, and then we'll open it up for questions, are the best practices for the team approach. And this is where we get back to how do you really foster a food safety culture with your corrective actions and your preventative measures and your root cause analysis processes. And it's a great way to be able to pull it together, because we have to remember that we're working towards one common objective. And that objective is to produce safe, quality food products. And everyone in the company should be working towards that same goal. So, what I really encourage you to do is to help eliminate the silos within the organizations, whether it's a maintenance department or sanitation department or operations, or it could be any of the departments itself. But, everyone needs to make sure that we're all on the same page, that we're all working towards that same goal as well, and that we're working together as a team with all of these functional departments to be able to help accomplish that as well. And then I just want to kind of focus in on some of the teams that you may use to be able to help manage this process, and it starts with the core food safety team. And that should be a multidisciplinary team to where you have representatives from each of your functional departments in your company. So we have QA, we have operations, we have maintenance, we have sanitation, we have receiving and shipping. You may have R&D and HR type people, but have a good core food safety team and rotate those representatives on a period of time as well. It's a great way to get people to sponsor your food safety systems and to get them committed to them as well. But, some of the key responsibilities of the food safety team itself is to be able to manage obviously the HACCP and the food safety plan on a regular basis, and then they could complete these 4 cause reassessments. And don't overlook the importance of these. So make sure you're keeping your HACCP plan or your food safety plan up to date all the time. So we all know things change rapidly in the industry. So every time you're introducing new finished products, new raw materials, new production equipment, those are reasons why you should be doing a 4 cause reassessment to make sure your food safety plan does stay up to date. Make sure they're involved in completing the annual reassessment processes that are required for that process as well. They're involved in the validation activities. And if you do have deviations from your critical limits, part of that CAPA process as well. But it doesn't stop with the food safety team itself. We really encourage other companies to have lots of teams as necessary, because there may be specific subject matter expertise that's going to be necessary for managing these types of processes as well. And I've listed like 9 teams, and you could probably come up with a lot more of this than them as well. So, some companies say, well, my food safety team does all of these things. And that may be possible, but that's, a big burden and a lot of responsibility and a lot of time to put on that one core team. But, you may have other teams available to do your management reviews, and make sure that includes the senior leadership all the way up to the top within your organization as well. Internal audit teams, CAPA RCA teams, culture teams, crisis management plan that's going to involve a lot in your organization that they have to be trained. Make sure they know what to do in the event that you have a crisis or recall. Food defense plan teams, could be supplier approval and environmental monitoring. So, these could be subcommittees from your food safety team or additional teams that operate, but make sure that you're pulling people involved then that have the right subject matter expertise and that they're managing these processes for you effectively as well. And then the last slide that I'm going to share with you here is, again, just fostering that positive food safety culture is to really get the right people involved on the right team. So you do make sure that you manage the operations on a consistent basis. Make sure that you do address and include all levels of the organization as part of those teams and having people involved with you as well. Again, going back to empowering your employees, encouraging the suggestions, promoting the communications to make sure that you have that effective two-way process in your plants. And a lot of companies have adopted, a simple philosophy. You see something, you say something, you do something, and that can be a positive part of your food safety culture as well. So hopefully you could have a theme that you can promote and communicate this throughout your organization as well. And then last, I always want to encourage companies, make sure you measure the right thing and that you report those results throughout your organization as well. So encourage you to do that. And then last, of course, at Alchemy Consulting, we're always here to help if you ever need assistance with your food safety and quality management systems and SQF systems as well, to help with internal audit processes and training and audit support as well. Free to call on us. And of course, Alchemy has a great frontline employee training solution as well. That would be happy to help with all your employees and automate those training records for you. And I wanted to get us to the questions and answers. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Jonathan and happy to answer any questions that have come in as well.
Excellent. Yes, we do have a number of questions that have come in, so let's just jump right in. First question, how could we get leadership to be more involved and willing to assist with corrective actions and completion?
Yeah, that's a big challenge in a lot of companies, and it's unfortunate because if you do have a good culture, that shouldn't be a challenge at all. But unfortunately, in reality, that's what happens with many companies. That they need to do something to get senior leadership more involved to be able to participate in these processes. Number one, or secondly, to be able to make sure they really are giving you the adequate resources that you need to manage your SQF system as well. A lot of it goes back to communications themselves. I can tell you we've done more than once where we've held special, just quick 1-hour training programs with the senior leadership of an organization to help them understand, a risk benefit analysis through this process that, if you don't sponsor this properly, the risk is that you could have a catastrophic product recall, you could have a foodborne illness outbreak, you could have audit nonconformances, you could lose your certification potentially and not be able to sell your product to customers as well. So, part of it is helping them understand the risk that if we don't do this, this is what could happen, but also just really encouraging them to do it for the right thing. If you look at a picture of a child or a person who died as a result of foodborne illness, you don't want to have to look at those pictures and know that happened from your plant. So, it's a combination of both, get everyone committed to doing it for the right reasons and helping understand not the why do we need to do it too.
It's all about the why. All right.
Yep, I like that.
Next question. Any tips to aid the elimination or reduce fear with temporary employees in raising concern?
Yeah, that's a great question. I appreciate whoever brought that up as well. And unfortunately, a lot of companies have to use temporary employees just to get their products made and to meet the customer demand as well. And those employees are equally important to every other employee that's in your company as well. They also have that potential to, jeopardize the safety of the products that you make and you do it. So you have to think about, where are you assigning those employees and how much responsibility do you really want to give them and what kind of training is going to be necessary as well. Make sure your temporary employees know that this is an important part of your organization. This is what your food safety culture is all about, and that it's okay to be able to bring something up, that you don't want them to be fearful of retaliation if they bring something up, or just shut down if they were to bring a suggestion to you as well. But go ahead and open the door and let them know that this is okay, this is what we want you to do, and this is a good part of our culture and our organization. So make sure that's part of your onboarding and orientation processes to help communicate that.
Great. Then we have two questions that are quite similar to one another. When an associate does not complete a form or document properly, is a CAPA required? Or is a CAPA done when you start seeing a trend? Seems like you have to do a kappa for every entry error. And then the next question was, how would you handle a kappa connected to a clerical error or employee error? Is the training is there and policy, but simple mistakes such as a typo can cause big problems. So
Yeah, yeah, and they can, they can. That's a mouthful of questions. I think you got three or four in there in one. So that was good, but they're all are related. Definitely something you have to consider as well. So you want to make sure that you're doing the kappas at the right time. Certainly, the minimum times that we talked about when they're required by the code. You have to go through a full kappa for every single minor clerical record keeping error that may occur. No, you don't. Do you have to do it for systemic reasons? If you see an occurrence of those trends happening over time? Yes, you absolutely do. So you want to make sure that you address it with that. The other times are, really when those key products are involved. If you have a critical limit deviation, if you have a non-conforming product that you have to put product on hold, if you have an equipment issue, some of those that we listed on some of the prior slides, that would require a kappa process to actually be completed, but it doesn't have to be completed for every single, minor record keeping error that may be done. So,
okay, great. In the supplier audit, we have various examples of the kappa process and documentation. What tips would you have to promote a robust kappa process and documentation?
now, is that like with the suppliers? Are you talking about?
Yeah, they say in the supplier audit we have various examples of kappa process, but what tips would you have to promote a robust kappa process and documentation?
Yeah, yeah. It's let me go ahead and give it to you from the perspective of a supplier and the relationship there as well, because this is critically important part of your process and your supplier approval process, and most importantly, as you do ongoing monitoring verification of your suppliers and your supply chain processes themselves, to make sure that you have a good supplier corrective action request process. So in this case, you may not be doing the kappa process yourself, but if you will have a truckload of ingredients and it backs into your dock and you've got a pallet on the back and you've got busted bags all over and tipped over spilled containers on the back of that trailer, then you want to initiate a kappa process with your supplier for those types of situations. And your responsibility may be to document, here's what the incident was, and then you send your supplier corrective action request and say, fill out the rest of this form. What happened? What are you going to do to keep it from happening again as well? And then make sure you have the responsibility to get that back, and then that their responses are going to meet your expectations through that process as well. And then the last thing I'd share about that is make sure you track those numbers of supplier corrective action request, or SCARs, as I like to abbreviate that one because it's a star on their record. And then if you, as part of your supplier monitoring processes, if you see that you've had a dozen SCARs from one supplier over a course of a year, that should be throwing a pretty big red flag. Is that really a good approved supplier moving forward for you?